Hey, my name's Omar and I'm the founder of TutorLyft. I'm also in the process of wrapping up my second graduate degree, so I thought I'd share some evidence-backed tips that got me through my exams. I wanted to create this video because nobody really teaches us how to study. It's something that we pick up intuitively over time, but the truth is that it's a skill, and it's a skill that we can continue to get better at as we progress throughout our school journey. Before we dive into the study techniques, I figured we could talk about some of the popular techniques that students do that really aren't that efficient. And these are things that I used to do when I was a student, but in reality, I was just doing myself more harm than good. And these three things are rereading, highlighting, and summarizing. I think we've all been there where we read a chapter of a textbook, have no idea what we just read, and then keep rereading and rereading in hopes of maybe we'll understand something. And maybe we end up memorizing a certain sentence or a chapter of the textbook, but that's really not true understanding. Then we move into highlighting parts of the textbook because we think, okay, this is a crucial part of information and I want to make sure that I know it. But what does highlighting really do? Sure, it's a pretty spot on the page, but are you really learning more from it? There's a lot of science and evidence that shows that highlighting is more of an aesthetic thing rather than something that's going to help you study, help you retain the information, but more importantly, help you understand the information. And the last thing is summarizing. So say you read a portion of your textbook and you can summarize it, but summarizing doesn't really prove understanding. Summarizing shows that you can regurgitate the information in a different way. Now I want to move on into 3 study tips that I follow religiously as a student that have helped me to really succeed on my exams. And the first one is focused intensity. So what exactly does that mean? Maybe you've heard of a technique called the Pomodoro technique, where what this is, you study really intensely for 25 minutes. There's a lot of science that shows that focus intensity is a really effective way of studying. The next study tip that I would have, and it's really related to the first one, is spaced repetition. I'm sure we've all been there a night before the exam, we're cramming till 2, 3 in the morning, but in reality, we're doing ourselves more harm than good. There's a lot of evidence that shows that exposing yourself to information over a longer period of time is proven to be more effective for your learning outcomes and getting a better grade. And what spaced repetition is exposing yourself to the material over a longer period of time. So instead of leaving everything till the week before the exam, till the night before the exam, I'm talking weeks or even months before the exam. And it's not studying 8 hours a day. It's maybe one day you're doing an hour, and maybe you're doing that 3 or 4 times a week. And as you get closer to the exam, you can ramp that time up. But you shouldn't be trying to cram all of the material into the night before, because you will not retain 90% of what you've learned. You might think you're being really productive, but in reality, you're not. The last tip that I would have would be pre-testing and quizzing yourself, which is strongly related to active recall. By quizzing yourself, you'll be able to see right away where your weaknesses are. I think a lot of the times when we study, we tend to dive into the material that we're most comfortable with because there's a bit of fear of diving into the unknown and going into material that maybe we're not as strong at, because there's a little bit of fear in us that we won't be able to succeed and we won't be able to learn it. But there's a lot of evidence that shows that testing yourself, understanding where you're struggling, and focusing on that material will help with your educational outcomes. And the reason why testing and quizzing yourself is so powerful is that it leverages a technique called active recall, where we have to recall the information in our brain in order to be able to answer the question. So after studying, you store that information, and when it comes time to test yourself, it's going to help to strengthen your understanding and your knowledge of that material.